This is the Wealth Roundup with Patrick Leonard from the Leonard Wealth Advisory Group of BMO Nesbitt Burns. Any postings and or social media content are the views of the advisor and do not necessarily reflect BMO's position or viewpoint. The information herein is for Canadian residents only and does not constitute any financial, legal, tax, investment, or other advice. It's the Wealth Roundup for the week of May 28th with Patrick Leonard from the Leonard Wealth Advisory Group of BMO Nesbitt Burns. Great to see you again, Patrick.
You too, Terry. How you doing?
Doing very well. Now, I know one of the most talked about things these days in family households, and it doesn't matter if it's baby boomers or Gen Z or Gen X or whatever it is, it's the affordability to purchase a home, whether it be a first home or second or whatever the case may be. There are definitely ways to go about doing it, and I suppose one of the first is a first home savings account.
Yes. So it's a great topic to be talking about. We often talk about the real estate market here in Canada starts in the spring. So I think there's a lot more seasonality to Canadian real estate as maybe compared to US real estate. You know, you've got families maybe choosing to move over the summer once the kids are done school. So yes, our focus has come into housing. You know, I don't ever remember a time where, you know, certainly you or I would say housing was cheap. It certainly never felt cheap. But when we especially look at some of the markets in Canada, specifically like Toronto or Vancouver, where the average house price is well over $1 million, it really seems like it's an insurmountable task for people being a first home buyer to get into the market, to be able to put together even the money for the down payment. So the first home savings account, relatively new program here in Canada, introduced in the late fall of 2023 by the federal government at a time where this was a key thing to address was housing. And where the first home savings account comes in is really for those first home buyers who are trying to put together that down payment and trying to make it just a little bit easier. Now, before the first home savings account, what were your options? Putting together money in a savings account, maybe borrowing it from family. There was something called the first home savings plan where you could borrow from your RRSP. But as someone who's also a financial planner, as well as being a portfolio manager, I was always really divided to whether or not this was a good strategy because you were having to sacrifice your retirement to be able to get into that first home. The tax-free savings account, I think, really nice tool, kind of a bit of a bridge between, using non-registered savings bank accounts and maybe your RSP is perhaps another vehicle to save for that first home. But now we've got this first home savings account, and it really offers a lot of the best features of both. Is that now you continue to save for your retirement with your RSP using that room that you're given based on your earned income. So 18% of your earned income is used to calculate your eligible RSP room. This first home savings account is $8,000 per calendar year for qualifying home buyers. And really what this means is you've never owned a home in Canada, or you could be somebody who maybe you owned a home with someone else, you separated or got divorced, haven't owned a home for 4 years, you're now going back out really as a first home buyer again, is that you're given $8,000 per calendar year to use for a down payment on that first home. And that $8,000 comes with a tax deferral credit similar to your RSP contribution. So if we think of Jack and Jill, they're saving for a home. They know they want to buy a home now or sometime in the future, is that they can put that $8,000 into that first home savings account, invest it based on their risk tolerance. So either very conservatively or they can try to grow it. All the income is going to be tax sheltered, like an RSP, like a tax-free savings account. But that $8,000 is going to give them a tax credit over and above anything else that they're doing with their RSP. So it's not the same room. It's a completely separate room. And so that $8,000 contribution might create tax savings of anywhere between $2,000, maybe $2,500 for kind of your average first home buyer. So really it turns that $8,000 into $10,500 for that first home buyer. And every little bit helps. And so if you're thinking, you got two people buying a house together, that's an extra $5,000 for that couple for that calendar year. Now, if in the end, a person doesn't end up using those dollars for a first home is the money can be moved over to their RRSP without a penalty. But then that RSP money is going to get taxed later in life when they withdraw it. The great thing about the first home savings account is that if it's used as designed, and that money is used as a deposit for that first home, is that that is not taxable money ever again, as long as that money goes towards that first house. So unlike the borrowing from the RSP, where that money was going to have to be paid back to the RSP and eventually taken back as income later in life, the money truly ends up helping homeowners build some equity in their home, put together that down payment. Now, important for anybody who's looking at this program to check out all the terms and conditions. And so it's well covered on the Canadian government website. But there's one thing for our listeners today to walk away with, is that if you still haven't bought your first home, or if you're somebody who's going to qualify as a first home buyer, maybe because of a marriage breakdown, is one of the things that I want people to think about is opening up a first home savings account to be able to maintain your deferral rates on the contributions. And what I mean by that is, unlike a lot of other programs where you earn the room to be able to carry that $8,000 contribution forward, lifetime of $40,000, is you need to have an account open. It's a very strange rule. Unlike an RSP or unlike a tax-free savings account, where as long as you're of legal age in the province where you live, you can carry forward that earned room. Is the only way you can carry forward that first home savings account room is if you open an account. Now, you may only have to put $50 or $100 in that account just to maintain that account's existence, but the account has to be open. So you could open the account in 2025, put $100 in it, don't put any more money into the plan until, say, 2026. And then in 2026, you can contribute the remaining space that you had. So maybe the $7,900 remaining room from 2025, and then the full $8,000 the next year. This is really critical. So I say, if you have any adult children, friends, kids that have just turned 18 years old, remind them to go and open up a first home savings account. 19 in the provinces like BC or Ontario, where legal age is until 19.
The markets, what's happening over the past week with the markets? What have we seen?
Yeah, so Terry, since you and I started this podcast, we've had nothing but good luck. Markets have been up and up. So we finally saw last week the first step back in the U.S. market. Now, the Canadian market actually had a good week, went on to set a new all-time high for the TSX 60, but the U.S. market actually pulled back a little over 1% last week. Now, going into the Memorial Day long weekend, as you sometimes see some soft trading in around the shoulders, some people perhaps turning the long weekend into a really long weekend. But we also saw two other things happen, is that we saw a blueprint for the U.S. tax bill, the great, beautiful bill came through. And maybe it's not such a great, beautiful bill. There's going to be more spending. The U.S. deficit continues to increase. What's really that increase in the deficit is coming in lieu of lower taxes. So that was something that, the market took a look at and said, this is going to affect the bond market. And sure enough, it did. We saw long-term bond yields increase. So effectively, long-term borrowing rates got more expensive. So that was something that pulled back the U.S. stocks. Canadian stocks still had a good week. Gold recovered. You might recall we had gold kind of step down the week of our prior podcast 3, episode 3. And then the other thing, we saw Bitcoin go on and set another all-time high at around $109,000 U.S.
It's ridiculous. What is it, 135 or something, 140 Canadian for a Bitcoin?
We'll have to save that for another episode.
Okay. June 4th, we're looking at the BOC Bank of Canada coming out with another rate cut, stay the same. I mean, inflation, if I read correctly, went down again, did it not?
Yeah, so we've seen a little bit of inflation going down from one measure, going up from another measure. So we had a slightly higher read on last week on another view of inflation in Canada. So our outlook is to expect no rate cut next week. At least the chances of a pause have increased. Now, that still kind of fits into our script, where we didn't think we would see a rate cut either in Canada or the United States until July. So we do think that the governors of these central banks still really cautious about letting inflation in the back door. So they're going to take their foot off the gas pedal. So no, we're not expecting any lowering of rates next week by the Bank of Canada.
Okay. Great stuff, Patrick. Thank you so much. The Wealth Roundup for the week of May 28th with Patrick Leonard from the Leonard Wealth Advisory Group of BMO Nesbitt Burns. We will talk to you next week.
See you next time, Terry.
This has been the Wealth Roundup with Patrick Leonard from the Leonard Wealth Advisory Group of BMO Nesbitt Burns. I'm Terry Evans. The Wealth Roundup is part of the Reluctantly Podcast Network.